Kia ora everybody and welcome back to Humankind. We've got an exciting day today. With this, a new patch update for Humankind game was released on Steam this morning, and also other news to cover, including the conclusion of that Lunar New Year event and a quick follow-up on the Mac release date. Some important news there. Let us like the video if you enjoy punctual Humankind content and the occasional Twitter musings. My name is Jumbo Pixel. Let's begin. Firstly, I'd like to start by just noting that this is quite a large list. We have some additions, some very important fixes, and then a whole load of other fixes. They're less likely to impact you, so I'll put them to one side and focus instead at the start here on the main changes. Then we'll flick through some controversy, some event updates, some other additions, and then some fixes. Let's begin. Firstly, as I say, let's tackle the three big additions that they decided to put at the front of this 1.0.10 Alan Newell patch 3 version notes. Okay, first up we have, and most importantly maybe, some added new movement markers in naval combat, making naval combat a little bit easier. We also, along that sort of mindset of making things a little bit easier, making things more transparent, more open and more obvious to the player, which will probably allow you to have a better playing experience, right? So they've done that with naval combat. Next up, also with the colony upgrades. This is a really important one because these colony upgrades do a lot to your city. If you're unfamiliar, you're turning it or sort of upgrading or building a new city with a whole load of existing infrastructure. It's very powerful. There are loads of different mechanics you can do. I won't cover that here, but what you need to know is basically this process is more clearer now. You'll know, for example, specifically how colony upgrades are used, which units can use them, right, settlers maybe, and players are also informed of the infrastructures that are built and that are limited by resources. This is a good thing for players who are really interested in infrastructure. Spoiler alert, infrastructure is really powerful in cities. That's what makes colony upgrades so dang strong. Now we should see a more transparent and open infrastructure and colony upgrade overlay, making it easier for you to determine what you need to do and what resources you need to connect in order to actually build that very powerful infrastructure. Again, there's not a lot I can show you here on screen, but it's an important change to understand. So I'm going to try and communicate it to you here. On the backdrop, by the way, you'll notice there's some super cut edited new footage of a boaty playthrough I'm doing to try and showcase Dutch in their best light. But really, it's showcasing the Swahili because they're awesome. So those are the major additions. There is one more. Players are now better informed about the rewards they have gained upon completing a community challenge. So I'm going to put the patch notes aside for 1 minute and talk about that challenge because we've just had one wrap up and some rewards should be in your Humankind inbox right now. The event itself, of course, required us to play the 3 Chinese cultures to celebrate the Lunar New Year. You can see them on screen. The rewards being distributed in this patch update. What do the rewards look like? Well, again, here they are on screen. You can see it was a mixture of player emblems, decorations, a new persona, a renowned mathematician and Chinese astronomer poet as well. How about it? Anyway, what you need to know is that this event was more simple, I argue, than the one before it. Dia de los Muertos required very specific things of us to run certain events, have a 300 population city. This one, play the cultures, get the rewards. We were tasked to earn about 1 million era stars, and I believe we made it to phase 2 out of 3. I say believe because unfortunately I'm having some sync issues between my Steam account and my Games Together account, and I can't seem to get the rewards to come through. If you've seen yours come through successfully, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. My understanding is we missed out on tier 3 on the persona, but we picked up the other things. Do let me know down below though if that's a mistake, and I'll be sure to pin the comment that answers that question the best. Before I address our next point, I want to bounce back to these glorious patch notes, okay? And just discuss them in a little bit more detail because we have more to discuss. Then we'll talk about the Mac refund controversy, and I'll also like to address some official, or relatively official, word on why there are delays between different versions of Humankind and why we might be playing different versions depending on what platform we're playing on. Anyway, let's talk about these important changes. I should also note that I won't show all of them on screen while I talk about them, but patch notes will be in the description. If you'd like to delve into the detail yourself, you're more than welcome to do so. As always, links below. Anyway, a few of the key ones that I wanted to bring to the fore here, not only because they're important fixes that maybe fix, glitches or errors, but more importantly, they'll probably change the way that some of you play the game, because they could have been really restrictive or stopping you doing things. So I'm going to share a couple of highlights for you now. Firstly, there were platform-related fixes. So if you're on Windows Store or Epic Games Store, you should have much better, easier trophies and a couple of culture civic bugs as well. More importantly for all players though, a few key issues that I've come across have been fixed. Firstly, your market quarters will be able to be placed correctly now. So if you were missing those, they've been fixed. I noticed there was a couple of small instances where that happened to me. A whole load of voice lines have been fixed as well, so you shouldn't have the narrator talking over himself, or female voiceovers have male voiceover during the dying animation as I'm reading through the patch notes here. Various little things like that. Units, solely female pawns could be using male voices, etc. Not for me to delve into the detail there, but that is what the other fixes in the patch notes suggest. Other than that, one or two other things that I noticed. Firstly, a couple of fixes around AI personas, including the strength screen coming back to it after gameplay, and also the maximum number of autosaves was set to 1, because some autosaves could be automatically deleted, really taking auto to the extreme. This happened to me once or twice, and that's why I wanted to quickly cover it here. Before we move through into the final section of the video, where I want to talk about the Mac release, and then a couple of other notes on how the Steam version, the version that a lot of us play, probably, differs from some of the others, i.e. Game Pass, right? A big one, where players can get access to the full game for nearly free, or at least a low cost to entry. And Stadia as well, Epic Games Store. I mean, there are so many. So let's talk about that now and summarize a few key findings from Humankind's February patch update. Now, the big thing to front here is this. The Humankind Mac release update. An expanded refund policy has been rolled out for players with M1 Macs. Now, you might think, I don't care about M1 Macs, nothing to do with me, but I think this matters. It's a process that matters. Some of you will be playing on these, so that matters to you, but more importantly, I think it also says a lot about Amplitude and how they approach these kind of wicked, complex problems. So, in a nutshell, I'm going to try and summarize this very quickly for you. In the Fabius Maximus update of November, the Mac version of this game was officially released. However, there's a difference between the normal Mac version and what we call the M1 chip version. A more updated chip that was released in Apple MacBooks. This is testing my knowledge, but I think it was from 2020 onwards in some of them. Again, not 100% sure, and it's also not fully important. What we need to know is, if you are playing on a Mac and you have an M1 Mac, it still won't be able to run Humankind. The next logical answer is, well, why? The M1 compatible version of this game will take significantly longer than what the developers thought. They say, as we did not have access to sufficient information and hardware before release, we could not start work on compatibility early. And we knew that the M1 chips used an entirely different architecture and instruction set than the x86 chips the game was made for. Basically, we didn't have early access to this new and very different hardware that came out of Apple. My understanding, relatively layman understanding, is that the M1 chip is designed in-house, the silicon chip by Apple. It's very specialized, not using the sort of generic hardware that most platforms, computers, Windows would run, and even normal Macs, older Macs. So here, essentially, you have some options. I made an important note on screen that this expanded refund policy does end on the 28th of February, so you only have a few more days to take advantage of it. All the detail, again, will be in the description, but basically, you can go through the Sega support website if you have a Steam version to get a refund, because Steam will be like, nah, you've had it for more than 2 weeks, so no. They'll be able to override that for you and work with Steam to get that sorted. So hopefully there's a fix in there. They're also, of course, working on a proper version over the long run. So if you don't want to refund, you don't have to. You will have Humankind on any one Mac, is my understanding. You might just have to wait a little bit longer. Again, full information in the description below. Now, before I move on to my summary, summarizing the video, the patch, what we've done, where we're going, I'd just like to quickly address one other thing, and that's the differences between platforms. I get this question sometimes in the comments, and it's not something that I'm fully qualified to comment on. However, I was talking to someone at Amplitude recently, and in a nutshell, in my own words, essentially, when they're developing for different platforms, i.e. Steam versus, let's say, Stadia, as a random example to pluck out, those different platforms or services have different conditions set on how they internally process updates. So Humankind could push the content out, but it may vary depending on how relatable it is to that platform, and as I say, the internal processes, approval processes, etc. that those platforms have. Some may take longer, they may want more detail, others might be more happy to push it through. Now, at the end of the video here, let's summarize what we've learned. So, in this patch update, the third part of the Alan Newell update that we've been receiving really throughout the year, I argue we received some fairly good quality of life improvement and significant fixes. This was not necessarily an update that delivered a whole load of new content, but it should have delivered successfully, and in my opinion it has, a more stable, easier to use, easier to interpret, and slightly more enjoyable version of Humankind. Thank you for watching. Do subscribe if you'd like more Humankind, and I'll see you in the next one.